Hello, everyone. So, in our session today, we are going to be talking about anti-inflammatory diet. We all know the inflammation is happening in our body, but we don't know what to do about it. So that's why we have Dr. Kaisa. Dr. Kaisa is a chiropractor as well as a functional medicine doctor. Welcome, Dr. Kaisa.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Sure. So let's just talk about what exactly it means when we say the word anti-inflammatory diet.
Well, when we're inflamed, our bodies are producing all kinds of inflammatory cytokines, and we're starting to get swollen. Our immune system is busy trying to fight this inflammation, and it's not doing what it should be doing. So, anti-inflammatory diet means we're trying to get our body in a more functional place, in a more optimal place, so it can do what it's supposed to do.
So now, what are the symptoms of inflammation that we will notice?
Well, there's different types of inflammation. There's acute inflammatory reactions, and that's when the body senses some type of invader or injury, and all of the white blood cells send all of these chemicals to that area to fight this infection, to heal this injury. So acute can last for days. But then when that goes on and it doesn't resolve itself, it turns into chronic inflammatory conditions. And this is what we're starting to see more and more these days. So chronic inflammatory conditions can go on for weeks, months, years. And that's when it turns into more of gut issues, more of diabetes, heart. It's turning into autoimmune type conditions. So chronic inflammation is when our immune system isn't able to keep up with what's happening, and now it's turned into a systemic issue.
So it would be like fatigue, or before the chronic medical condition, a person would feel like a fatigued all the time or a brain fog, stuff like that.
Fatigue, aches, pains. Maybe you work out and you don't heal as well as you used to after. You don't recover as well from a workout. Headaches, gut issues that just never seem to resolve, even when you change your diet. Swollen hands, swollen feet, swelling anywhere in the body. So generally fatigue, headaches, pain, that type of thing.
So let's talk about what is the cause of this inflammation.
Well, there are, lifestyle makes a big difference. So different things can create that. The diet is the number one thing that I see in my practice is people are eating inflammatory foods and the body doesn't recognize it as a good thing. So everything stops doing what it should be doing to fight these invaders that are coming in. Toxins, infections that haven't been treated. Different things can create inflammation, but diet is really one of the easiest things we can start to work with. Stress creates inflammation. A sedentary lifestyle can create some inflammation. Our bodies were meant to move. They're meant to kind of work things from, all the way through. So stress, toxins, untreated infections, sedentary lifestyle, and foods are kind of, in my opinion, the top 5 things that can create inflammation.
So how do we now start on the anti-inflammatory diet? What should we do? Type of food?
I always say we want to bring in the good stuff and start limiting the bad stuff. I don't like everybody's different. I don't think a 180 change for a lot of people is doable or sustainable. So we want to start first identifying the trigger foods and then start bringing in the better foods. So you want to start with some of the bad stuff that I like out of the picture first. Sugar, sugars, it's good, but it needs to be limited. And sugar's a very slippery slope. The more you eat it, the more you want it. Your body has those cravings. That also includes artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are 10 times or 100 times, they're saying, sweeter than sugar. So it's going to set up more sugar cravings. So sugar, fried foods, processed foods, anything that's boxed and on a shelf has a shelf life. It doesn't go bad. So they have to add preservatives and fillers and all these things to make it last in a box. So shopping on the perimeter of the grocery store and kind of staying away from the aisles. So fried foods, sugar, alcohol needs to be limited. Women, they say about 6 drinks per week. Men, it's more about 8 to 9 drinks per week, maybe 10 drinks per week. That sounds like a lot to some, and that sounds like not so much. But women really don't get away with more than 1 or 2 per drinking session, and that's only a few days a week. So alcohol can create that. So I'm thinking gluten is another thing that it's kind of, people don't like to hear that, but it's such a hybridization of a process of growing gluten these days. So glyphosate are grown into the grain, pesticides are grown into the grain. Research is now showing that gluten, whether you're sensitive to it or not, creates what's called a zonulin reaction. And so the lining of the gut permeates every time you eat gluten. So a normal person will close back up after 24-hour period of eating gluten. But somebody who's sensitive to it, and not even celiac, just sensitive to it, those intestinal barriers will stay open. And that's when the bad stuff comes in, the good stuff goes out, and it creates a leaky gut, and that creates inflammation. So when we're trying to clean things up, I say, sugar, alcohol, artificial sweeteners, processed foods, but then to really start limiting gluten, and dairy is a secondary food to that can create a lot of inflammation, and people do better without it often.
So it's very sneaky, right? In the sense that sugar is like so many foods when you go into a grocery store, Whole Foods.
You really got to learn to read the labels, because teriyaki sauce, barbecue sauce, so many things have these hidden sugars. So then we just have a taste for it. We want it all the time. And now there's a lot of, artificial sweeteners, maltitol, erythritol, sucralose, so all the sugar alcohols are kind of coming in, which I don't think are great either, but they're also creating more sugar cravings. So then everything we're reaching for has some sugar. So reading labels is really important. My rule of thumb is a serving size should be less than 7 grams of sugar per serving of something. Really, my rule is under 5, but I say start with around 7 or 8. So you can kind of get used to really changing your taste buds to not need that sugar.
Wow. So then you just walk in the Whole Foods, go into the produce section, and then get yourself out.
Get some meat, get some good fats, get some vegetables, get a little bit of fruit. And you really want to stay on the periphery. You want to stick with whole foods. So when we're dealing with an anti-inflammatory diet, we want lots of veggies. Now, depending on your gut situation, you might need to cook those veggies. A lot of people don't get away with all the roughage, all the raw foods to break down. So really, veggies just provide such a great source of fiber, such a great source of nutrients. And if you're going to cook them, just lightly cook them so we don't cook out all the nutrients. We want to think a little bit of fruit. I don't really go for a high fruit diet. So I always say 1 to 2 servings a day of the lower glycemic fruit is best. Some of the lean proteins, fish, chicken, turkey, lean meat, grass-fed, organic, reasonably grown. So really looking at the quality of the meat that you're buying matters. Sticking with sometimes fermented foods, whether it's kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, kefir, those types of things really add some good bacteria to help your gut. Tons of water. The rule is half of your body weight in ounces. And then for every cup of caffeine or any type of alcohol, more water. So, if you're sticking with a ton of vegetables, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of the good fats, raw seeds, nuts, avocado, olive oil, salmon, tuna, those really good fatty fishes, lean proteins, and tons of water, then really, if you're focusing on that, and then the little things that sneak in because we're human and they're good, you get away with a lot better when you're bringing in a lot of the good stuff.
And what about bread? Should we let go of bread altogether?
I don't like flour products. They're not doing us any favors. I think they're okay in small amounts. Again, I'm not such an absolute person, and my kids like bread. And so again, as a mom, I've learned that, nobody listens to me anymore, but so Bread, sure, but I do gluten-free. I do grain-free sources of bread, but gluten-free here and there, but no flour products, crackers, bagels, bread. Those are a treat type food and should come in sparingly, in my opinion.
Not even wheat flour, right?
I don't like wheat flour. Some people do get away with it. But I do oftentimes when people come in with an inflammatory condition, I ask them to take 30 days off of gluten and dairy to see how they feel when that's done. Because sometimes it's these hidden reactions. So we don't have a stomach ache when we eat it, but when we take a month or two off of it, we'll notice that that inflamed thing that was happening might go away when we take those foods out. So, wheat, sometimes you'll even go to another country and say, gosh, wheat doesn't hurt my stomach when I eat it there. And that's because of the hybridization of the way it's made here. But gluten itself can create a lot of inflammatory reactions, even in a different country. So gluten is one of those things. Some people really aren't bothered by it, but a lot of people who don't think they are. And it takes really taking it out of the diet to see how you feel.
So what do you recommend as far as carb intake?
I like root veggies. I like sweet potatoes. I like beets. I like carrots. I like to roast a bunch of root veggies for carb intake. I'll use cassava flour, almond flour, tapioca flour, and I do baking. I do more of a paleo style baking from home. I'll do coconut flour. So there's a lot of recipes out there that offer some great suggestions that you can buy them pre-made if you want. But again, even those, I feel like you still have to limit some of the more of the simple starches and focus on the root veggies for some of your carb intake and all the really rich vegetables you can eat too.
Sure. And I know you are also a chiropractor. So, do you think, we should get some adjustments as far as the inflammation? I mean, there's the food intake that we are talking about. Well, what about the other manual stuff?
Yeah. Well, it's all about movement. And when things get stuck, that's what creates the inflammation. That's what creates the stagnation. Lymph coagulates, oxygen and blood can't get to the extremities, to the brain, to help the body communicate. So chiropractic adjustments, even just the movement, I always say really gets the body into alignment. What I love about chiropractic is we're dealing with the nervous system. We're dealing with the spine. So in the spine houses the blood supply, the nerve supply, the cerebral spinal fluid. So when we get stressed out, we're kind of, our back hurts, our neck hurts, we're holding all of the weight of the earth on our shoulders to really, those muscles are going to pull some of those vertebrae out of place. And so the nerve conduction, the blood flow can't get to where it's supposed to go optimally. So a chiropractic adjustment puts everything back into alignment so your body can communicate to the rest of your body efficiently and optimally. And it really just gets out those stuck pieces that create stagnation. And stagnation gets us stuck in life emotionally, gets us stuck in life physically, gets us stuck in life physiologically. So it's really, I love chiropractic because it just, it gets the kinks out. It gets your body communicating effectively.
Absolutely. We have a question. Someone is asking, I have been adding turmeric to smoothies. How much is good for inflammation and how much is too much?
Okay, so I love turmeric. It's the gold standard for inflammation. So turmeric, I suggest 1 to 2,000 milligrams a day on an average. 1 to 2,000 milligrams a day. When somebody's really inflamed, I'll put them on 3,000 or 4,000 milligrams for a few days to kind of gut tolerance. Your gut will tell you when it's too much. And I'll do that for a short period of time. But generally for turmeric, 1 to 2,000 milligrams a day.
And what type of turmeric? Like in the sense the root turmeric or the powder?
Really, I buy it in like a liquid form. I sell it in an emulsified form because you want to make sure you're absorbing it. And research is showing that black pepper added to turmeric makes it more absorbable. So if you're buying a supplement, make sure there's a little black pepper in it. And the food sources are great in a smoothie every day, but sometimes you don't get the dose you need for it to be a therapeutic dose.
So then you recommend supplementation.
So I recommend supplementing with it if there's a chronic inflammatory issue. Yes. Otherwise, it's great in the diet.
Sure. What are the foods that we should focus on besides turmeric? Any particular superfoods that we should focus on for inflammation?
Yeah, so for inflammation, I love omega-3s. So omega-3s, whether it's fish oil, flaxseed oil, pumpkin seed oil. But again, I like to supplement with that. When somebody's really inflamed, I'll put them on a bigger dose. An average dose of omega-3s would be 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day. But when somebody's really inflamed, I'll jump it up to 5, 6, 7 grams a day of fish oils. Now that does create thinning blood, so you can't do that for that long, and you have to be careful who does that. So that's not me giving advice to somebody I don't know, telling to take mega doses of fish oils, but 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day is great. Another little trick is enzymes. When you take enzymes away from food, it works with inflammation. When you take digestive enzymes with food, it breaks down your food. So enzymes, fish oils, turmeric, taken away from food, are a beautiful, beautiful protocol for inflammation.
Great. Any other comments, questions from anyone before we wrap up? These are just small tidbit of information that we try to give every single day to help you get on the natural medicine roadway rather than the pill roadway. That's the intention. So any other questions, comments, you are welcome to send us later in the comment area with that. Any last comments from you before we wrap up today?
No, thank you so much for having me. I love getting this information out there.
Yes, thank you so much. And to everyone else, the message today is get on the inflammatory diet to help yourself. That is the message today. And with that, thank you for your